Hi, I'm Rochelle. I'm doing week 4 for our group, QQTP. I'm going to try to be concise and hopefully you can follow my logic with this. I'm like learning at a really high speed. And so I have a lot of things kind of coming together. And so please be patient with me. So my question is, I'm just going to read it off. We are all in a position where we are able to participate in self-development, a privilege that many are denied for many reasons, including socioeconomic status and class. What disadvantages and or advantages have you experienced that have led you here? The quote that I chose, and I chose this one because I kind of explained that in my first talking point, but it gave me usable information and gave me like a tool I can put in my tool belt when I have conversations with people regarding white privilege. So the quote is, and I took it from How to Talk to a Poor White Person About White Privilege or something like that. The concept of intersectionality recognizes that people can be privileged in some ways and definitely not privileged in others. There are many different types of privilege, not just skin color privilege, that impact the way people can move through the world or are discriminated against. I am a white woman. I have a lot of peers who are white, and I have experienced a lot of pushback from people whenever white privilege kind of came up in conversation. And it really seems to really strike a chord with some people. And so I, had always tried my best to be like, present myself in a way that the message was going to be heard and not be off-putting or preachy. But I'd never heard of intersectionality, this concept, and I am really excited that I now know a little bit about it so that hopefully I can use that when I'm trying to have conversations with people that kind of lead to this place. So my talking point number 1 is about intersectionality, and I found this concept to be very poignant, especially in our current political climate. In my experience, I found that people think that the only type of privilege is racial privilege. And that kind of leads to the assumption for white people that if you're white, then you're automatically privileged. And then that discounts any kind of hard work or and it kind of like invalidates their accomplishments. There's definitely white privilege. I'm not trying to argue that point. I totally get it. I'm coming from the place of where when people are reluctant to think about it or talk about it in another way, that's where this is coming in from. So I'm speaking to the reluctance or refusal of white people to acknowledge it. And I found this to be one of the biggest misconceptions and regarding privilege, and its effects are pretty wide-reaching. Such a big part of change is acknowledging that there is a problem, and so I feel like this idea of intersectionality where it gives the person permission to be like, yes, I'm white. That may have made things easier for me, but that doesn't mean that I didn't experience this kind of discrimination or challenges that made it hard. I think that's something that everybody can kind of understand. I also find it important or helpful because it forces ourselves and others to consider other social issues we face. So politically speaking, as I kind of said before, I claim that the dominant understanding of what privilege means to the average white American is that white people get things that they don't work for. This is an overly simplistic and narrow view of what's being reinforced and propagated through our media. And since it confirms what people feel to be true, it kind of sticks. So I also believe that this is the underpinning for many current policy changes, and it's striking a chord for many white people who don't fully understand or have the motivation to understand what privilege is. And this concept of intersectionality holds the potential to help switch the narrative. If one if one can describe their plight, not as a result of race, but from things there that are possibly, I think that it just holds. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read and it's not flowing well, but I just think that it's key to hopefully opening and unlocking awareness and acceptance and just being open to it. So this is why I'm asking my classmates to think about any kind of hidden privileges and discrimination we hold that we have experienced to get us here at UOP in this moment. My second talking point is related to the wealth gap that we have in America when we look at privilege and class and socioeconomic status. And my mind's kind of racing, putting all these pieces of information together that I've read and I've heard. In the Indigenous Peoples History of the United States, we read that J.P. Morgan, along with several other wealthy, powerful, and prominent men, were given land stolen from the Native Americans to sell for personal gain. This happened way back in the 1860s or so. And it's the same family that foreclosed on in the Newman's house in Two American Families. And it's the same family that received government bailout as a result of bad business decisions when the financial crisis happened. And they didn't experience any adverse financial consequences. They are the same people who use their wealth and power to increase their wealth by not paying taxes and creating loopholes by pressuring charities and politicians through donations. This family has been at the top 1% since the very beginning. They were given privileges to get there, and they are still getting them. $120,000 is a drop in the bucket for them, but to the Newmans, it was their whole life tied up into one bundle. And maybe that story infuriates you, but it's not relatable. I work at a private school. Its yearly tuition is on par with many public colleges. My family and I were invited to another family's house, and we showed up to an 86-acre ranch and learned that the parents are children of physicians, and them and their siblings graduated from prestigious colleges, 2 of them being Stanford. And now their children are receiving the best of the best education, and the cycle just kind of continues. So now this family is not even on the same financial level as JP Morgan, but it does highlight the wealth gap and how the haves are being set up to continue to build wealth and prosper. So why am I bringing this up when I'm asking you to reflect on your experiences that brought you to UOP? Because we know that socioeconomic status plays a big part in how we got here, how we will get through this, and what our life will look like after. So socioeconomic status is an accurate and well-studied indicator of how one's life will be, especially in education. This feels like it should be a part of the intersectionality exploration and talking point number 1 that kind of goes into the question that I asked. So I feel like this doesn't stir something inside of you. It ought to, because how do we be agents of change to help make education equitable to all people, regardless of socioeconomic status? How can we help educate and introduce this idea, the concept of intersectionality? All these things are just things that are swirling inside my head. So thank you.